My name is Eliana Moore. And the last thing my mother said to me before that night was, "Don't embarrass me." She said it like I was still 22, like I was still the daughter who needed to be reminded how to dress, how to speak, and when to stay quiet around important people. I didn't know, standing outside that formal reception in Boston, Massachusetts, that within a few minutes, the people inside that room would learn exactly who I had become. And my mother had no idea either. I want to tell you this story exactly the way it happened. Not the polished version. Not the version that would make my family look better. The truth. So I won't start with my childhood. I won't start with the house where I grew up, or the company my mother built, or all the years I spent trying to understand why the woman who loved me could make me feel like I was never quite enough. I'm going to start outside the hotel, standing at a registration table with a black folder in my hands. I was wearing a simple dark blue suit. No expensive necklace. No designer handbag. No watch worth more than most people's monthly salary. Just a small black folder. I wasn't there as an ordinary guest. I had been invited for a specific reason. My mother knew I had been invited. She just didn't know why. And that was probably what made her most uncomfortable. My mother, Victoria Moore, was 64 years old. She ran one of the most successful real estate development companies in New England. Over nearly 3 decades, she had built major projects in Boston, New York, and Connecticut. Her name appeared in business magazines. She received invitations to charity galas. Senators took pictures with her. Powerful people returned her calls. But there was one thing my mother loved more than almost anything else: influence. She always said that being good wasn't enough. People had to see you as important too. I believed that when I was a child. Then slowly, I learned what important meant to her. It meant what people could gain from you. She would look at my clothes first. Then my job. Then whoever was standing beside me. And finally my future. Love usually came somewhere near the bottom of that list. Sometimes it didn't seem to make the list at all. That night, I was standing at the registration table when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Eliana." I turned around. My mother. She was standing with 2 business executives, a state senator and a well-known attorney. She looked me up and down. Then her eyes stopped on my clothes. "That's what you're wearing?" I gave her a small smile. "Yes." She stepped closer and took my wrist. Her fingers were cold. "Don't make tonight difficult for me." I looked at her. "I'm not making anything difficult." She leaned closer. "I mean, don't do anything that makes people talk about me." I was about to answer when she said the words that had followed me for years. "Don't embarrass me tonight." Then she turned away. Conversation over. Just like that. As if I were an employee who had been given instructions instead of her daughter. I watched her walk away. 5 years earlier, those words would have cut straight through me. That night they didn't. Instead, I felt strangely calm. Because for the first time, I knew that within minutes, my mother was going to learn something about my life that I had never known how to explain to her. I turned back toward the registration desk. A young woman looked at my name on her tablet. Then she looked at it again. Her expression changed. "Ms. Moore." "Yes." She lowered her voice. "There's a separate entrance arranged for you through the back." I shook my head. "That won't be necessary. I can go in with everyone else." She hesitated. "I was instructed to notify the program director as soon as you arrived." I nodded. She touched her radio. "She's here." Just 3 words. But 2 security officers nearby immediately straightened. A man across the lobby looked in our direction. Then he started walking toward me. He wasn't an ordinary employee. He was Samuel Reynolds, director of the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency. I already knew him. My mother didn't. When he reached me, he didn't give me the kind of polite handshake people usually exchange at formal events. He looked directly at me. "Eliana, we've been waiting for you for 45 minutes." I nodded. "I'm sorry." He smiled. "You're here now. That's what matters." My mother heard him. She was about 10 steps away. She turned. And for the first time that evening, I saw something on her face that I had rarely seen growing up. Surprise. She walked toward us. "You two know each other?" Samuel looked at me, then at her. We've been working together for quite some time. My mother's eyebrows tightened. Working? I said nothing. Samuel opened his folder. Ms. Moore, your daughter will be called to the stage during the first part of tonight's program. My mother looked at me, then at the folder in my hand. For what? I gave her a calm look. You'll find out soon. For the first time, she looked at me like I had become someone she could no longer completely understand. And that was the moment I remembered how all of this had started. 12 years earlier. I was 22. And in my mother's mind, my biggest mistake was refusing to work permanently for her company. She had offered me a senior position before I even graduated college. The salary was excellent. The office was beautiful. There was a company car. There was even a path toward eventually taking over part of the business. I said no. I told her I wanted to work in public service. She laughed. Public service? Yes. She put down her glass. Do you have any idea how much people would pay for the opportunities I'm offering you? I'm not doing it for the money. She looked at me. That's your problem. I stayed quiet. She continued. You don't understand the value of life. I looked at her. Maybe I understand the difference between the value of life and the value of money. She stared at me. After that, we barely spoke for months. After college, I took a job with a small nonprofit organization. My work involved helping communities prepare emergency programs for families affected by disasters. My salary was less than what my mother probably spent on a weekend. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was doing something that mattered for reasons bigger than my last name. Then one winter, a massive snowstorm hit New England. Several small towns lost power. Roads disappeared under snow. Hospitals were running on generators. Older residents were trapped inside their homes. Our organization suddenly had to help thousands of people. I worked for almost 3 days without real sleep. Food packages, medicine, generators, blankets, emergency transportation. We were coordinating everything. On the third day, the fire chief of a small town called me. We have a problem. What kind of problem? There's a senior living center. About 60 people. Okay, we'll send a van. The road is closed. What about a snowplow? Stuck. I looked out the window. Snow was still falling. How far away is the center? About 4 miles. 4 miles isn't much on an ordinary day. That night it felt like a wall. I looked at my team. We're going. We left. It took nearly 3 hours to reach the building. When we finally arrived, I saw an elderly woman wrapped in a blanket. She grabbed my hand. Will the power come back? I didn't know. But I lied. Yes. She looked into my eyes. When? I squeezed her hand. We're going to stay with you until you're safe. Over the next 14 hours, we moved every resident to a safe location. Not one person was left behind. That night, I learned what service really meant. It wasn't a beautiful word. It was exhaustion, cold, fear, 7, and standing beside people who only wanted one thing from you. They wanted to know you weren't going to leave them. After that storm, my career changed. I became involved in statewide emergency programs. I completed specialized training. I spent nights in emergency operations centers. Floods, wildfires, hurricanes, blizzards. Sometimes we couldn't stop a disaster. We could only reduce the damage. And I learned something important. Some battles aren't won. You simply get people through them alive. My mother never really understood that. Sometimes she would see a picture of me and say, "You look exhausted." "I'm working a lot. You could come work for a real company." I would smile. She thought I was being stubborn. I knew I was building my own life. 5 years later, I joined a specialized emergency management unit. Our job was to coordinate agencies during major disasters. We worked before the news cameras arrived. We studied weather data, identified vulnerable communities, tracked hospital capacity, prepared rescue teams, and sometimes we made decisions where a mistake could mean someone didn't make it home. I never hid the work from my mother, but I didn't explain much either, because I knew what she would ask. What do you get out of it? I knew the answer, but I never gave it to her. Some things don't need to be explained to people who only ask about the price. Then came the storm that changed everything. A year earlier, a powerful hurricane began forming in the Atlantic. At first, forecasts suggested it would mainly affect coastal areas. Then the models changed. And changed again. Eventually, we were looking at a storm capable of causing severe flooding across several states. We started preparing immediately. Hospitals were warned. Shelters were opened. Rescue teams were moved into position. But the storm took a path nobody had completely predicted. Rainfall reached levels far beyond the original forecasts. A small town called Riverdale was almost completely surrounded by floodwater overnight. And there was a nursing home there. 83 residents. Some used wheelchairs. Some depended on oxygen. Some couldn't even remember their own names. We received word that the building had lost power, and the backup generator was about to be flooded. I grabbed the radio. "Where's the rescue team?" The answer came back. "Roads are blocked." "What about boats?" "The current is too strong." I studied the map. There was an old service road behind the building. It was already underwater. I contacted a helicopter pilot. "Can you land?" "No." I paused. "Then don't land." Silence. "We only need to get people and supplies close enough to begin the evacuation." 2 hours later, our team began moving residents with the local fire department. A woman kept asking about her cat. An elderly man kept asking where his wife was. Another man kept saying, "I need to go home." His home was several miles away. It was already underwater. By sunrise, all 83 residents were safe. Not one person had died. I received a statewide award for the operation. I sent my mother a picture. Her reply was simple. "Nice picture." That was all. No congratulations. No questions. No pride. Just 4 words. I put my phone down. And for the first time I realized something. Maybe I had stopped waiting for her approval. 3 months later I received an invitation. A National Emergency Resilience Conference was being held in Boston. State officials, federal representatives, business leaders, and several major public figures were attending. My team had developed a new emergency response model. It could help hospitals, fire departments, and local governments distribute resources before future disasters became critical. I was chosen to present it. My mother's company was one of the major sponsors of the conference. That was why she had been invited. And that was why I hadn't told her much. I didn't want my work connected to her business relationships. If anything came from my work, I wanted it to carry my name. That night, everything came together. My mother, her friends, her business partners, and the people who had never taken me seriously. The event began. My mother was already seated at the main table. I stayed near the back. A few minutes later, Samuel Reynolds walked over. 5 minutes. I nodded. My heart was beating faster. I wasn't afraid of speaking in front of large groups. But that night was different. Because my mother was there. And I knew that within minutes, her entire understanding of me was about to change. Then I heard my name. "Please welcome Ms. Eliana Moore." I walked toward the stage. The room applauded. I looked forward. My mother was staring directly at me. She still didn't understand. I reached the microphone. "Thank you." Then I began. I didn't make it about myself. I talked about my team, fire departments, nurses, ambulance drivers, people whose names never appeared in the news. I said, "The purpose of emergency management isn't to make a crisis look beautiful. It's to make sure that when everything is going wrong, nobody feels completely alone." The room became quiet. I presented the data. Hospitals, thousands of patients, rescue routes, fuel, medicine, shelters. When I finished, there were a few seconds of silence. Then the room erupted in applause. I looked toward my mother. She was clapping, but there was something different on her face. She wasn't happy exactly. She was realizing something. For the first time, she was seeing what I had built over the previous 12 years. And it was something she hadn't built for me. It had been built by me. During the next part of the program, the state emergency director called me back onto the stage. He spoke about one of the hardest disasters we had managed the previous year. The nursing home. 83 residents. 0 fatalities. My mother heard every word, and I knew she finally understood. That was the story I had never told her. When the event ended, my mother came to me. She was holding a glass of water. "You did all of this?" I looked at her. For a long time. She was quiet. Then she asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" I gave her an honest answer. "Because every time I told you something, you asked what I was getting out of it." She didn't answer. For the first time, she had no new question. She stood there for several seconds. Then she said, "I always thought you were stubborn." I smiled faintly. I was. She gave me the smallest smile. "You still are." Probably. Neither of us laughed. But the air between us wasn't the same anymore. Then she asked me something I never expected. "Are you actually happy?" I stopped, because this might have been the first time she had asked about me without asking about my salary, position, or future. "Yes." "How?" I looked at her. "Because I know who I am." She lowered her eyes. "I didn't know." "I did." She looked back at me. "Are you angry with me?" I answered honestly. I was. She stayed quiet. "But I'm not anymore." "Why?" "Because being angry means you still expect something from the other person." She looked away. Then she reached into her purse. "I have something for you." She handed me a small envelope. Inside was an old photograph. I was about 10 years old. I was holding a science project. My mother was standing beside me. On the back was a handwritten note. "My daughter, who wants to make the world better." I stared at it. "When did you write this?" "The day of your science fair." "I don't remember." "I never showed it to you." "Why?" She took a breath. "Maybe I thought if I told you I was proud of you, you would outgrow me." I looked at her. "Why were you competing with me?" She gave a quiet, almost embarrassed laugh. "Because I spent my entire life proving that I didn't need anyone." Then she looked at me. "And I was afraid you would see me too clearly." For the first time that night, I saw something different in my mother. Not the businesswoman. Not the woman everyone respected. Just a frightened human being. She had once been somebody's daughter too. Maybe she had spent her entire life trying to prove that she was enough. Maybe that was why she had learned to control everything. Even me. I reached for her hand. She looked surprised. "You don't have to control me." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know." We stood there quietly. Then she asked, "Can you ever forgive me?" I didn't answer immediately, because forgiveness to me was never going to be a single sentence. "I can try." She nodded. "That's enough." We walked outside together. But our story wasn't over. The next morning, Samuel Reynolds called me. "We have a problem." "What happened?" "Your mother's company submitted an application for a major coastal development project." I went silent. "The area is inside a projected future flood risk zone. What do you want me to do?" "Nothing personally. We want you to lead the independent review." I closed my eyes. "Samuel, there's a conflict of interest." "We know." "Then why me?" "Because you're not supposed to be influenced by anyone." I took a breath. "And if the report goes against my mother's company?" "Then that's the report." I ended the call. 2 days later, I went to my mother's office. She was standing behind the glass wall of her office when I walked in. She looked at me. "Why are you here?" "I need to talk to you about the company." She sat down. I told her I had been asked to join the independent review team. Her expression changed. She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Can you protect me?" I looked at her. "If you're right, yes. And if I'm wrong? Then no." She leaned back in her chair. Then, surprisingly, she said, "Okay." I was almost shocked. She continued, "This time I don't need my daughter." She looked directly at me. "I need the expert that everyone in that room respects." For the first time, I saw something in her eyes that I should have seen years earlier. Trust. The review began. We studied the numbers. Environmental reports. Flood models. Historical records. Insurance data. Then we found something. An internal company report had significantly underestimated the flood risk. It wasn't a small mistake. If the project went ahead as planned, thousands of homes could eventually be placed at serious risk. I told my team to prepare the report. That evening my mother called. Eliana. Her voice sounded different. Yes. I know what you found. I said nothing. Can you stop the report? No. There was a long silence. If you submit that report, my company could lose tens of millions of dollars. I know. And you're still going to do it? If I don't, someone else could get hurt. She went silent. Then she said, I'm proud of you. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I honestly thought I had misunderstood her. What? I'm proud of you. Then she ended the call. I sat at my desk for a long time. 12 years. 12 years for 2 sentences. But the strange thing was I didn't need those words anymore. I already knew who I was. The report was submitted. The project was stopped. An investigation began. My mother ordered a complete internal review of the company. She admitted to the board that some decisions had been wrong. Cost her money. It hurt her reputation. But she gained something else. For the first time, instead of trying to control my life, she stood beside it. And I learned something too. Sometimes walking away from your family doesn't mean destroying the family. Sometimes distance gives 2 people the chance to finally see each other clearly. A few months later, my mother gave me another letter. It said, Eliana, I spent my entire life believing a strong mother was someone who built the road for her child. Now I understand that maybe a strong mother is someone who lets her child build her own road. I'm sorry it took me so long to see you. But now that I do, I am incredibly proud of you. You are not the heir to my company. You are not part of my success. You are your own success. Love, Mom. I read the letter. Then I folded it and put it in my bag. I hugged her. Not at an event. Not in front of cameras. Not in a crowded ballroom. Just us. A mother and her daughter. 2 people who were finally looking at each other without titles, money, or expectations standing between them. And maybe that was the real victory. People think success means proving everyone wrong. I used to think that too. I thought one day my mother would stand in front of me, see everything I had accomplished, and finally say, I was wrong. But when that day came, I didn't feel the victory I had imagined for years. I felt peace. Because long before my mother approved of me, I had already earned something more important. The right to own my life. My name. My choices. And my self-respect. My mother once told me, people who move forward are the ones who know their value. Back then I thought she was talking about money. Now I understand that maybe even she didn't know what those words really meant. Knowing your value doesn't mean proving to the world how valuable you are. It means that when someone tries to make you feel worthless, you refuse to believe them. That night in Boston, my mother didn't save me from embarrassing the family. For the first time, she let me become myself. And maybe the greatest victory of my life wasn't that an entire room knew my name. It was that when I stood in front of my mother, I no longer needed her approval. I could love her. I could try to forgive her. I could rebuild a relationship with her. But I could never hand her my identity again. Because that belonged to me now. Some things aren't won. They're built. And sometimes you build them by becoming the person you were always meant to be. I still work in emergency management. My phone can still ring in the middle of the night. A town can still flood. A hospital can still call for help. A rescue team can still need a route. And sometimes I still have to make decisions where someone's life may depend on getting the answer right. The difference is that when I look in the mirror now, I don't see my mother's expectations. I see my own face. And I remember that young woman sitting in a small office 12 years ago, wondering if she had chosen the wrong path. She hadn't. She was just learning how to hear her own voice. And if you ever find yourself standing in a place where someone is trying to tell you who you're supposed to become, maybe you don't have to fight them immediately. Maybe you simply have to start walking quietly toward your own life. Years later, those same people may look at you and ask, how did you do all this? And maybe you won't have a long answer. Maybe you'll just smile and say, I finally started living the life that was mine. And for me, that is the real ending to this story. My mother once told me, don't embarrass me. I never imagined that years later she would stand in front of me and say, "I'm proud of you." But the most important part is this. When she finally said those words, I didn't wish she had said them sooner. I simply took her hand and said, "Thank you." Because I finally understood something. Sometimes we get the love we spent years waiting for. But by the time it arrives, we've changed so much that we no longer need it to survive. And maybe that is freedom. No longer needing to hear your worth from someone else. Writing your own story. And one day looking back and saying, I didn't lose myself. I was just taking my time finding my way back to me. If this story reminded you of someone in your own life, or of a decision you once had to make just to become yourself, remember this. Sometimes walking away from someone isn't hatred. Sometimes it's the first step toward saving yourself. And sometimes years later, that distance gives two people the chance to find each other again. This time without conditions, without a price, and without the fear that becoming yourself will make someone stop loving you. Because in the end, the greatest victory isn't getting the world to recognize you. It's recognizing yourself.